Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into the sources to pull out the key insights on complex topics, and today we're diving into something pretty urgent, maybe even frustrating for a lot of you, especially if you're in North Carolina: summer turf disease.
Oh yeah, it's definitely front and center this season for, turf pros and homeowners too. If your lawn's looking a bit sad, you're definitely not alone. North Carolina's climate, I mean, you've got the coast with all that humidity, then the Piedmont's transitional zone. It's basically cooked up a perfect storm for turf diseases this year.
A perfect storm. Yeah, and it's not just like intense, right? We're seeing this stuff pop up way earlier, even on lawns that usually look great through summer.
Exactly. Earlier and hitting harder.
So, okay, our mission today is to unpack what's really going on, figure out who the microscopic culprits are, and most importantly, give you some practical ways to prevent it or, well, treat it effectively if it's already there.
And just a quick note, if you happen to be in the North Charlotte or Huntersville area and you're wrestling with this stuff, Lawn Pride North Charlotte Huntersville is a great local resource. Rob and Shelley Holcomb, they own it. They really know their stuff for treatments. lawnpride.com is also useful. Good info there too.
Good kip. Okay, so we're going to focus mainly on what we're calling the big three troublemakers this summer.
Yeah.
That's brown patch, gray leaf spot, and large patch. And we'll also look at why they're so bad right now: the weather, nitrogen, and just, basic lawn care routines, the cultural practices. So let's start with that perfect storm. You mentioned the climate, but can we dig a bit deeper? Why is North Carolina's specific climate such an incubator for these diseases, showing up so strong and so early?
Well, it's this combination we get here. You've got these high daytime temps, right? Often into the 80s, sometimes 90s. But then, crucially, it stays really humid overnight. The dew points remain high, especially near the coast. So what that means is the grass blades stay wet for like a continuous 12-hour window, sometimes longer.
12 hours.
Wow. Yeah, and that wet period is happening at the exact temperatures these fungi absolutely love. It lets them germinate, grow, spread. Basically, their whole life cycle speeds way up compared to drier places. It's like leaving the door wide open for them all night long.
That sounds relentless for the grass. Okay, so that constant wetness is huge. You also mentioned it's not just the weather driving this pressure. What are the other key things we need to get a handle on?
Right, so beyond those weather patterns, the humidity, the long wet periods, nitrogen management is a really big one, often overlooked. How you fertilize, when you fertilize, it can accidentally make things, well, much worse. Like rolling out the welcome mat for disease.
Rolling out the welcome mat. I like that. And the third.
And then it's your basic cultural practices, how you mow, how you water. These everyday things are fundamental for prevention. It all ties together. So even a lawn that looks healthy can suddenly get hit hard if these three things aren't managed carefully, especially this year.
Okay, let's meet the enemies then. This rogues gallery. What's the main threat we should be looking out for in NC lawns right now?
The undisputed big kahuna for summer here is brown patch. It thrives when you get those sticky 80 to 85 degree days with high humidity. You'll usually spot it first as these sort of circular patches, and they can get bigger really fast.
Okay.
But the key identifier, the thing to really look for, is early in the morning, before the dew burns off, you might see this kind of grayish, smoky ring around the edge of the patch.
The smoke ring.
Yeah, exactly. That's the mycelium, the actual fungus growing. If you see that, that's brown patch. And you need to act, because it can take out a lot of turf pretty quick if you don't.
Got it. Smoke ring, early morning. That's a good visual. Now, sometimes people see brown spots and assume, but it could be something else, right? What about gray leaf spot? How do we tell that apart, especially if you've got, say, St. Augustine or tall fescue?
That's a really good question, because they can look similar from a distance. But gray leaf spot acts differently. Brown patch makes those circles of collapsed grass. Gray leaf spot, it mainly attacks the individual leaf blades. You'll see these little spots, maybe oval or longer, grayish or brownish lesions right on the leaf. Often they have a darker border, kind of purplish brown.
So on the blade itself, not the whole patch collapsing as much.
Exactly. It's not usually forming those big distinct circles like brown patch. And the damage it does is sneaky. It messes with photosynthesis, so it weakens the whole plant from the leaf down.
Okay. And the third one on our list?
Yeah.
Large patch. I've heard that called a real warm season grass killer. What's his game plan? Why is it so destructive?
Yeah, large patch is bad news, particularly for warm season grasses like zoysia or Bermuda. The scary thing is, it attacks the roots and the crowns first, down low. So by the time you actually see those large, kind of irregular, sometimes orangey brown patches showing up above ground, the damage underneath is already pretty bad. extensive even. It's working underground, destroying the root system. That's why prevention is just so critical with large patch. It's like seeing the tip of an iceberg, you know? Most of the problem is hidden at first.
Wow, okay. So with these things working silently, especially large patch, it sounds like just spraying fungicides when you see a problem isn't the best approach. Being proactive is key, right? Building up the lawn's defenses.
You nailed it. Prevention is absolutely your first and honestly your best line of defense. Think of it like boosting your lawn's immune system. A lot of the common headaches in North Carolina turf, not just disease, but things like fire ants, grubs too, they're largely preventable if you're strategic early on with treatments and, crucially, with those good cultural practices.
Right. And you flagged nitrogen management earlier as a big one for prevention. I think most people just think nitrogen, green grass. How does it actually make the lawn more vulnerable?
Yeah, that's a super common thought, but it's where things can go sideways. The big mistake is hitting cool season grasses with high nitrogen in late spring or summer, or doing the same to warm season grasses in the fall or winter. It's not just a buffet, like we said. What happens is that excess nitrogen forces really fast, lush, succulent growth.
Succulent tissue, okay.
And that type of growth actually changes the plant's cell walls, makes them thinner, weaker, almost more porous. So it's much easier for the fungus to actually penetrate the leaf blade and start an infection, especially when it's wet and humid like it is here.
So it's not just feeding the fungus, it's actually weakening the plant's physical defenses. That makes sense. What about watering then? Keeping it green without creating a disease playground?
There's definitely a right way and a wrong way. The best approach is deep and infrequent watering. You want to soak the root zone, then let it dry out a bit. This encourages deeper roots, and the timing is critical. Water early in the morning, like 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., ideally.
Better.
Yep, because that gives the grass blades the entire day to dry off completely before evening sets in. Lawns that stay wet overnight, they are absolute disease magnets. That long period of moisture on the leaves is exactly what spores need to get going.
Okay, early morning, deep and infrequent. Got it. And the last cultural practice, mowing. You hear about scalping. Why is cutting grass too short such a problem for disease?
Scalping cutting it way too low is genuinely one of the main things that invites disease. We always tell people, mow high. When you scalp it, you put immense stress on the plant. You're basically creating open wounds on the grass blades.
Ah, like little entry points.
Exactly. Easy entry points for pathogens. You weaken the plant and give the disease a way in. It just makes your turf way more vulnerable.
Makes sense. Okay, so we focus on prevention, nitrogen, watering, mowing high. But let's be real. Especially in a tough North Carolina summer, sometimes disease just happens. What do we have in the toolkit when prevention isn't quite enough?
Right, sometimes you do need to treat. And when you do, picking the right fungicide is really important. You can't just use anything. There are basically two main types. You've got contact fungicides. Chlorothalonil is a common one. They work on the surface, like a protective shield. Great for prevention. But if you've already got an active infection brewing inside the plant, you need systemic products. These actually get absorbed by the grass and move through its system to fight the fungus from within.
Okay, contact for prevention, systemic for active infections. And I'm guessing timing is pretty critical here too. Like, can you wait too long?
Oh, timing is absolutely everything, seriously. The best fungicide on the planet won't help much if the disease has already run rampant and destroyed a lot of the turf. That's why you have to be watching your lawn closely, regular scouting, looking for those first signs. Early detection is key. If you catch it early, your chances of knocking it back and getting full recovery are much higher. It really is a race against the clock here.
A race against the clock. Okay. Now, something I've heard from pros is the importance of talking to clients, or even just understanding for yourself what's happening. People see brown spots and panic. What's a common misunderstanding, and how does explaining things help?
That's a huge point. Communication really is half the battle, especially if you're managing lawns for others. The biggest misconception, that the lawn will look instantly better right after treatment. Sometimes, especially with these systemic diseases where the fungus is inside, the turf might actually have to look a bit worse before it gets better.
Worse before better. How so?
Well, the fungicide starts working inside, but the plant still needs to shed the already damaged or diseased leaves. So it might continue to look a bit brown or thin for a short while as the healthy growth pushes out the old stuff. Explaining that upfront, maybe even showing pictures of the process and reassuring people that the treatment is working even if it takes time, that manages expectations and builds trust. It stops those panicked phone calls.
That makes a lot of sense. And practically speaking, for the pros listening, It probably pays to have your pricing for these disease treatments figured out beforehand, right? Since it's often an urgent call.
Absolutely. Know your product costs, your labor, add your margin, have that ready to go. These often are emergency calls. You don't want to be scrambling to figure out pricing then.
Good advice. And another practical point.
Documentation. Always take photos. Before treatment, after treatment. Keep good records of what you applied, when, the weather conditions, notes on what you saw. It's not just CYA, though it helps with that. It's how you learn. You see patterns. You see what works best in certain conditions. It helps you refine your whole approach year after year.
Right, learning from every situation. Okay, so wrapping things up as we head further into this summer, it seems clear disease pressure in North Carolina is definitely up this year, starting earlier. And prevention through those good cultural practices is really the name of the game.
Absolutely. Focus on prevention. Keep an eye out for the big three: brown patch, gray leaf spot, large patch.
And remember, communication, right? Explaining things, whether to yourself or a client, helps manage expectations. And constant vigilance, scouting that lawn.
Yep, regular monitoring, early detection are vital. Like you said, things can change fast here. Disease can seem to explode overnight in our climate. You almost have to be a lawn detective, checking daily for clues.
Lawn detective, I like that. For folks wanting to learn more, keep up with this stuff.
NC State Extension Turf Files online is a fantastic resource. Always reliable info there. Regional turfgrass conferences are great too. And if you're really stumped, the NC State Turf Diagnostics Lab can help identify tricky problems.
Excellent resource. And again, for those local to North Charlotte-Huntersville, lawnpride.com is worth checking out. So we usually end with a final thought. Given everything we've discussed about these turf challenges,
well, maybe think about it this way. Every challenge, like this intense disease pressure, is actually an opportunity to differentiate yourself. Whether it's your own lawn you're managing or you're doing it professionally for clients, think about how tackling this disease pressure while using your knowledge, communicating effectively, how that builds long-term trust and success. It's not just about fighting a fungus. It's about showing real expertise and building relationships.
Thank you for listening to the Pain in the Grass Fodcast, sponsored by Lawn Pride of North Charlotte, Huntersville, your go-to name in turf care for homeowners and businesses seeking beauty, quality, and reliability, powered by family and fueled by passion. Until next time, make sure to take care of that pain in the grass.